In this set of videos on lecture 7, we will look at constructors. We'll focus on constructors. So from Java, you know what constructors do. They're supposed to initialize data members of a class. And so that's the kind of thing we'll do. But first I want to get started by looking at some approaches to setting up programs using Eclipse. So I just want to maybe make sure that everybody can set up a simple class that's a main class plus a class with then a constructor. So I'll go through the steps of setting up these classes using Eclipse. Okay, so we'll for what we want to do in this chapter, chapter 7, it's constructors. We look at some more tools like inline functions, const parameters, in methods, static data members, and then finally we'll take a look at the vector class. So it's kind of similar. Basic idea is the same as the vector class in Java. That is Java util vector. Same basic idea, of course. There's a slightly different interface, or a slightly different way of using them. Okay, so before we go any further, let's go through a basic setup of one class, let's say a main class that uses an object from that's an instance of another class, and we'll set up all the things that we need in Eclipse. Okay, so we did this kind of thing before where we set up, this was from lecture 6, we set up a struct. Remember, in a struct the convention is to use okay, so let me back up. Instruct all the data members by default. If you don't specify the visibility, the data members are public. Contrast that to classes. You could set up a class just like this, and let's just do that. Class xc, and if you do int x double y semicolon, and that's the entire class. If you try to use this, what you will see is that these two data members are not accessible because this is a class, and for classes the default visibility is private. Okay, so as opposed to structs. If you want to make something public, you have to say public. Similarly, for structs, we can make data members private. All right, so that's basic structs and classes. You know the difference between them. And once you set up a simple class, you know that you have to set up classes like this. You say class Y, public, all of the public methods. We didn't set up a constructor in the previous section, a previous chapter, but we are going to this in this chapter. And then finally we have our private data members. We also saw that we can set up method bodies outside the class declaration. So this is the class declaration, goes from here to the semicolon. And then if we want to set up method bodies, we can set them outside or inside, and we did both. So here's a method that has a method body inside the class declaration. Here is a method that has the function definition for getY outside the class declaration. All right, so we can do both. So normally we won't set up classes like this. This is not how we do things. So let's go through how we would do things from now on for the rest of the semester. Okay, so I'm going to start out with a brand new C++ project. So you would follow the same steps. I'm going to call this lec07. Make it an empty project. And we're going to have debug and release versions. We'll only use the debug. And click on finish. You should get this new new project, sorry. Now what you want to do is create a new source folder. First thing you want to do, so new source folder, and I'll call it src, and finish. Now I have my src folder. and I'm going to say new source file. So I'm not going to say class just yet. We'll hold off on that. So I'm going to create my main program in a new source file. Call it anything we want. So I'll just use lec07. That's for lecture7.cpp. Use the default C++ source template. So all you need to do is specify a name for this source file. This is the, you should see the source file dialog or wizard. Okay, so here's our simple lecture 7. All right, and so you want to set it up and make sure that everything works. You want to pound include IO stream and put in the using namespace standard int main, no parameters, void in parentheses, and let's just see if cout works. Okay. Alright, and then we'll do an end line. And we just want to get this working first. So I'm going to save it. Usually the errors stick around for a little bit and then C++ decides, oh, okay, this is all right after all. All right, so then we will compile it, worked, and then run it. Okay, so it prints out the one thing that it's supposed to print out. Good. So now we got a working main program like we've done many times before, I hope. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on source. I'm going to right click, or in the Mac, control click. I'm going to say new, and here's where things are different. Okay, so once again I'll back up. I'm going to click on source, right click and say new, and then say class. Alright, so then we get the C++ class wizard. We don't need to do anything with namespace. We'll do that later on in this course. And let's give it a name. I'm just going to call it XYZ. You can give it a better name than that, but I'm going to keep it simple. Just give it a class name. Everything else will be fine. We don't need destructors right now, so if you want, you could click on this to disable creation of a method stub for destructors. You don't need them. If you want, you can keep it, yeah. So let's keep it simple. Just to have the constructor checked. If you don't want that, that's fine too. All right, and then we click on finish. All right, so it creates two files. So that's the thing you want to pay attention to. There's two files that it's created. It's created an xyz.h, in which there is a class declaration with just a constructor. And here's the thing that's different. It creates an xyz.cpp. Okay, and this xyz.cpp pound includes the xyz.h. Alright, so this is the structure that we'll see from now on. We can remove this to do message because it just doesn't do anything. Alright, let's save that and let's compile everything, and everything will compile, no problem. So we have three files now. Let me get rid of this. We have our main class, the class with the file with the main method, main function. Sorry, I keep switching those terms, but you know what I mean. And we also have an xyz.cpp and an xyz.h. First thing you want to do probably is to pound include and in double quotes xyz.h. Okay, whatever file that you created, you don't have to call it xyz. Whatever file you created, the .h you should include in main. And now what I want to do is I want to set up an instance of this object xyz. So I'm going to say xyz x, and I'll do, oops, that. Okay, we want just this much to compile. And we don't know if everything's working, but let's just see what happens. Alright, so it looks like everything worked. And if you look in the console, you should see that Lex 7 was compiled. And what else? And I believe XYZ was also compiled. Alright, so let's try running this. And we'll print out a message at the end to make sure that it reached the end. Alright. Compile all of this, and I believe everything worked. And you can test it by just modifying something slightly. Let's put a space here, save it, compile it. Yes, notice that it did compile xyz.cpp just because we changed one thing. We just added a space and saved the file. That's the kind of thing you want to test out. Okay, now let's make this class a little bit more interesting, just a tiny bit more. We'll put in data members, private int x and double y. Okay, and then we'll have the constructor take parameters and int, and I like to use x in for x, and this kind of names I like to use y in for y. All right. And then we want to copy this because we have to paste it. So I'm going to copy that, save this, paste it in here. So it's kind of a pain because you have to have the same things in two places. And then we do what constructors usually do. We initialize the data members, x underscore n, and then y is equal to y underscore n. So that's the kind of thing that constructors are supposed to do. Our errors went away. Let's just check. Let's build everything. Save it first. Build all of this, and then we get an error message because we don't no longer have the default constructor. Okay, so now it looks like things are working. That's actually a good sign that we got an error, because now this should work. Okay, so I have an int and a double. This should end up calling this constructor with the two parameters, an int and a double. And where is the initialization done? It's done in the xyz.cpp file. Remember, we had to paste the parameter list and then actually put in what this thing was supposed to do, initialize x and y. And now let's save everything. Let's make sure everything is saved. And then remember, C++, you have to recompile. You have to hit the hammer, click on the hammer, and it looks like everything worked. And also run it just to make sure. Okay, so there is a very detailed look at how to set up a simple main class, a class with a main method, which uses a class xyz. Remember that we use the wizard. And we got two files, xyz.h and xyz.cpp. This is the structure that we're going to use for all our classes. If you want another class, just right-click on source, create a new class, and that will go through the wizard, which sets up the h.h file and the .cpp file. And you're on your way. All right, so hoping that you can follow this procedure for the rest of this semester.